In an increasingly partisan Congress, Minnesota's home to a lawmaker who recently ranked among the 10 most bipartisan U.S. senators. Amy Klobuchar's 17 years in Washington have included a lot of work with folks on both sides of the aisle, most recently with Republican Congressman Pete Stauber as the two helped secure Blotnick Bridge reconstruction funding. Last month, I traveled to Washington and got to spend a few minutes with Minnesota's senior U.S. senator. During our trip to Washington 5 years ago, there was one Minnesota lawmaker unable to make time for us.
Hello, everyone!
Turns out that's because Senator Amy Klobuchar was busy preparing a speech.
To announce my candidacy for President of the United States.
While that run for the White House would come up short, Klobuchar wasted little time getting back to work, ultimately turning the bulk of her attention to out-of-control prescription drug prices.
Our country is getting ripped off, not just seniors, on drug prices compared to Canada, compared to so many other nations, and it's time for change.
In 2021, the senator joined forces with Republican Chuck Grassley, pushing to import more affordable prescription drugs from Canada. A year later, she worked with Senator Bernie Sanders to allow Medicare to pay the same price for prescription drugs as the VA.
Today was the day that Medicare announced the first 10 drugs selected for price negotiation.
Just last month, Klobuchar highlighted that work by bringing Iron Range rural health care leader Ann Bussey with her to the State of the Union.
We keep going.
Bussey told us at the time about the strain those drug costs are putting on folks in Northeast Minnesota.
And then they're making choices between their medications, food and housing.
Where is that effort at in bringing down those prescription drug costs?
Well, good news on that front. After years of work, we finally passed the bill, my bill, to allow for negotiation of drug prices under Medicare. And so unleashing actual competitive negotiation is going to make a big deal. The first 10 drugs that are being negotiated are blockbusters: Jardiance, Januvia, Xarelto, Eliquis, and many others.
Klobuchar has also been central in the fight to cap insulin costs at $35, an effort touted last month by President Biden during his State of the Union address.
I want to cap the cost of insulin $35 a month for every American who needs it. Everyone.
That speech came just a month and a half after both Biden and Klobuchar visited the Twin Ports to tout the billion-dollar investment in the Blotnick Bridge reconstruction project. Why is that funding for that bridge in particular, that piece of infrastructure, so important?
There are some things that are small, you can get done, and then there's big things. The Blotnick Bridge is a big thing. Duluth is increasing important port, not just to Minnesota, but to our nation.
Your experience with the president when you were in the Twin Ports, I saw you were at Earth Rider
we went to a bar.
Yeah.
It was fun. And he was in good spirits on Air Force One coming in. Nice ride. Then he's just excited about that bridge.
In recent months, the senator's also been vocal about her push to fund needed repairs to Duluth International Airport's air traffic control tower, which is no longer FAA compliant.
The air traffic tower, third oldest in the nation, sometimes underwater, that's got to stop.
Another example of a project the Minnesota lawmaker is eager to tout that came about through work across the aisle.
That's why Senator Smith and Representative Stauber and I worked together to advocate for funding for that. We've gotten $10 million with more to come.
The senator's up for re-election this November. She's being challenged by Republican Joe Frazier, a Navy veteran from the Twin Cities. Tune in tomorrow night for my final Washington one-on-one, this time with Wisconsin U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin.